in-depth analysis of national current affairs. Freshly pressed on Smooth 98.1. Headlines,
headlines. Studio. Good morning, Lagos. You are listening to Smooth 98.1. Welcome inside a Freshly Pressed. It's on Smooth Breakfast with Valentine.
And with Folu.
Yes, today is Thursday, the 20th of September. It's about 7:32. We are kicking off discussions about our national news headline stories, as well as the international just the headline stories. There you go. Just the national stories. But do make sure you join us in conversation, okay? Send us a message to our WhatsApp number, 0809 444 0981. That is the number you want to send a WhatsApp message to comment on today's national headlines. And you can also tweet at us. Just make sure you use our hashtag. It is freshly pressed 981. If you check on that hashtag on Twitter, you'll find the stories have already been tweeted out to you, so you know exactly the headlines that we'll be covering this morning. And if you would like to also comment on our live stream, do know that we are streaming live on YouTube, so you can go over there and check us out. Joining us in the studio this morning, we have the very lovely Funmi Odude. Good morning, Funmi. How are you?
I'm fine. Good morning, Folu. Good morning, Lagos.
Yes.
Good morning.
People will say it could rain.
I was going to say it's raining quite heavily out there at the moment. Yeah, the heavens have opened up. So drive safely, people. I'll start off with the first story on the national front from the Punch newspaper. Yeah, or you're starting off with that.
That's right. Examination fraud. Buhari overrules IG, stops Adeleke's invitation by police. So the president yesterday, Muhammadu Buhari, stopped the Inspector General of Police, Ibrahim Idris, from inviting the candidates of the People's Democratic Party in the governorship election that's slated for Saturday. That is in 2 days' time in Osun State. Senator Ademola Adeleke. They said the police said he was invited actually to Abuja to answer to charges of examination malpractices, criminal conspiracy, impersonation, breach of duty, and aiding and abetting. So many things, allegations. Now, from this story and the details that we see, the police public relations officer Jimoh Moshood had released a statement saying that Adeleke and 4 others need to report to their offices for the special investigation panel to answer to questions of alleged examination fraud. Now, in this same report, we learned that WAEC, the West African Examinations Council, released a statement saying that Adeleke actually sat for the exams in 1981. So perhaps the police did not carry out the proper investigations into this before inviting him.
Well, in other news stories that I've seen on this issue, what the full statement that those stories claimed WAEC released was that he only sat for one paper.
Yeah.
And so they don't know where the results came from. But usually we like to say the government should not, the president should allow some form of independence to security agencies to carry out their investigations. We like to say that on one hand, and then we say on the other hand that our security agencies have become partisan, and we cry witch hunts they are, and which is what a lot of people alleged in respect of Adeleke's story. That this was obviously with so many criminal and so many investigates. Why are they focusing on this election malpractice at this time?
At this time,
Yes.
2 days to the election.
Yes.
And then keeping in mind
time.
that there are certain individuals in government that have their certificates put to question, and they haven't gone after them.
And this coming at the heels of Kemi Adosho's resignation and all of that.
Yes.
Is a lot. But if we're going to talk about issues and not people, do not. If we're going to make it, if we're going to say that it is wrong for the president to get involved in the independence of security agencies and in whom and in how they carry out their investigations, I don't think that should change with regards to any situation. Now, saying that, it does not also mean that we can't also call out security agencies when we feel like they are being partisan.
Yes.
So it's a lot of wrongs on a whole lot of issues. Saying that as well, we can't say that the refusal of the security agencies to pursue one person as opposed to the other is also wrong. So if we the issues. I'm sure this is maybe reacting to all the different clamor and all the different views about it being partisan, about the person, all the issues we've raised. But we should not praise it for one situation and then decry it for another.
Yeah.
It deals with the independence of security agencies to pursue their investigations in the manner that they deem fit, as well as if I believe that if he was going to deal with this issue, let's talk about the partisan nature our security agencies are taking with regards to elections. That is wrong in itself, but this is also, I believe, also wrong in itself as well. So
how many wrongs will make it right in this story?
Well, I don't know, but especially the way the newspaper says it, he overrules, like he gave a direct instruction to the IG, do not pursue this person. Do not pursue this person. I mean, well,
I guess he just wanted to forestall, just stop them from going ahead.
We've got a few messages very quickly. Ike sends a message saying, why is Jimo always in the thick of politically insensitive cases? I can't remember him talking about Adeosun's issue. Having said that, the president should not get involved. While Shegun says, if Adeleke had not been trying to be too clever, the police would have nothing to accuse him of. And then... we have this one from Trevor Noah's lapel pin, who says Adeleke sat for only English and he got an F9. This is a sitting senator that is running for governor. Nigeria. My God.
Another sad thing that might come from this issue is we begin to look at small sins versus big sins, small crimes versus big crimes. So we're letting go of forgery like that. We are getting used to letting go of forgery like that.
Yes, because this INEC sent a message to actually say Adeleke should be allowed to run his political race, but he should stop making it look like a greater sin.
Wow.
Let the IG cast the first stone.
Wow. Move on to this next story from Guardian newspaper. Government suspends national carrier takeoff over investors' apathy. So it seems from this story that Nigeria Air would not fly at the time that it was, planned to. It was initially scheduled for December 24th as a takeoff date. Now, the federal government has suspended indefinite takeoff for the proposed national carrier, though the Minister of State for Aviation, Hadi Sirika, who announced this decision yesterday, did not give reasons, but upon investigation, it seems like a couple of reasons have come up from different quarters as why this has been suspended indefinitely. One of which is the issue of the former
existing companies that were struggling with their own operations, and they will be competitors to Nigeria Air. The second reason given was a lot of investors are wary of the Nigerian market. Credibility and honor in respect of contracts, which is not very surprising. And he particularly mentioned the antecedents of the government with a lot of issues, a lot of concession agreements that are yet to be resolved. The Murtala Mohammed Airport Terminal, the issue with Bakare,
yes,
it's been going on for years, still unresolved. So they're wary about coming into the market for irrespective of a sensitive area like that. And then, like the issue that you have already mentioned, there's still the issue of the yet to be settled severance and pension packages of Nigeria's Airways over 6,000 former workers and the environment in which they're operating. And then the final issue mentioned by the Guardian is the failure of the government to release 3.2 billion naira initial startup capital on time, as was proposed in the outline business case for the project. So it all goes back to ease of doing business. This time around, we're inviting investors. What kind of environment have we created for them? We see a lot of issues relating to ability to honor contracts.
Yes.
Entering into a new project without first of all clearing the backlog of the issues we've had. I mean, I read a lot of analysis when this project was the project was first announced, and a lot of people spoke about that the severance package for the workers. There's always been an issue. So for you to move forward is something that you must be ready to deal with or have a plan.
Yes.
To tell you to give to the investors. But all in all, I'm one of the proponents of government never being in business, although I'm a strong advocate for PPPs. But for PPPs to work, there must be extreme due diligence before such is entered into. And then the most important of all is the ability of the government to honor contracts. It's the most important of all. Almost every PPP that we've entered into as a nation is having issues with regards to that. We're having issues in the electricity sector. We're having issues with road and infrastructure because of that. So I think that is a red flag anytime.
Yes.
It's any person would think twice about entering an agreement with someone when they know that you can turn your back against them at any, and you have the executive might to almost get away with it.
Awele agrees and says up on WhatsApp, the indefinite suspension of the national carrier is a blessing in disguise. It is at the very bottom of our priority list. Can we talk about the whole airport mess and have that sorted out before we even begin to talk about a national carrier? While a Dr. ICM says concerning the suspension of the carrier, Rotus was spot on earlier this morning on Business Express. There's no spin. There are more negatives than positives. This government is not sound on economic management and reforms. 1.5 billion for cholera or flooding our Papa roads wasted on a whim.
Wow. Vanguard newspaper is next. Let's look at a story now that says mandatory use of national ID numbers begins January 2019. While the headlines is not really honing on to the facts, the details really show that it's a possibility of something happening in January 1st, 2019. So that enforcement of the mandatory use of national identification number by all Nigerians, it says it might come into full implementation from that date, said that it follows the Federal Executive Council's approval of the immediate implementation of a strategic roadmap for digital identity ecosystem. And this is one of the things that I would expect to happen. Funmi, what are your thoughts on this?
Okay, so maybe this will help us get a final figure on, or at least a close-up range as to how many Nigerians we have. This is good. It's been a project that's been in the works, although almost destroyed by the usual problem of our corruption and all of that. But it's a good project, and it's I think it will help. We do not have the resources at the moment to call for a census. So maybe this will help. And also it will also help as the way that the BVN is, a national identity number attached to your person. It's an easy form of identification for all range of things, banking, government issues, and all of that.
Maybe social security in the near future.
When we get to that, but it's a good form of identification. It is a very good project.
All right, thank you very much, Funmi, for that one. So very quickly, we move on to this next story from Premium Times newspaper. The headline reads, Nigerian Army sets up rehabilitation center for injured soldiers. So the Nigerian Army has said, in collaboration with German government under an agreement signed in December of 2017, they have set up a modern rehabilitation center for soldiers that have been injured in combat and non-combat operations in the country. They said it's yet another major milestone in the efforts to provide optimal healthcare intervention to our troops, and indeed is highly commendable. Looking at the fact that most soldiers, some soldiers really you express a bit of apathy when they are being transferred or relocated to certain hot spots in the northern part of the country to fight insurgency. How do you see this? I mean, because it's a positive, right? But
it is. What is there a more?
It's fantastic. It's fantastic news.
If we have not had this before, it's very sad. I mean, especially when you consider how long we've been dealing with insurgency in this country. And further down in the story, it's a rehabilitation center as opposed to a hospital where you just go treat your wounds and all of that. It's welfare of our security agents, and officers are one of the things that we've often spoken about, and this is a critical part of welfare. So because of the level of our healthcare system in Nigeria, where you almost feel blessed to just be healed, we don't really talk too much about rehabilitation, and it's quite important. Especially when you're dealing with people that are facing trauma. I mean, it's not easy to have to kill a person or to get wounded in battle and all of that. The mental issues relating to it. I'm glad for the sudden awareness we seem and the exposure we seem to be having in respect of mental issues, but the mental issues relating to it, the psychological effect of all of that. So having a rehabilitation center for them is a great part of their welfare. It's something that we long should have done. Better late than never. If we are doing it now, great, very fantastic.
Thank you for that. Messages coming through up on Twitter. Roasted Corn Addict tweets and says, Nigeria is the only place where something can be suspended before it has begun operation. Niger Air, Ogoni cleanup, second Niger bridge. Didn't they do feasibility studies before they paid 30 million for a logo? Such incompetence trumps corruption, he says. While Kenneth just sends a plea out here on WhatsApp saying, listen, I registered for National ID card in 2015. I'm yet to receive it. Please help me beg them to send it. 3 years. This is bad. God bless. But also help me tell Minister of Works to commence work on the Lagos end of Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. It is also really bad. Kenneth, we're with you. Let's move on and talk about things that are bad. Flood alerts. NEMA have served an evacuation notice on several Imo communities. There are 7 flood-prone communities in the Ohaji, Egbema, and Oguta council areas of Imo State. They've asked them to leave the area following an unusual and yet persistent rise in sea levels. Now, the lake has risen. The Orashi River and Oguta Lake have both risen above the levels of the 2012 flooding that displaced so many people and caused untold damage, really. Funmi, your thoughts on this, and NEMA just reminding everyone again, please leave the area.
So I believe this is more a housing issue than even a flooding issue, because the question that comes to you is, and the questions most of them ask is, where do you want us to go?
Yes.
So it's more of a housing issue. And I'm going to take this from the federal government to the different state governments. So what are states doing regarding housing schemes? That's not something that is very popular, except in metropolitan cities. Even in metropolitan cities, it's not as readily accessible to low income and middle class. So it's something we need to look at, because that is the core of the story. And nobody wants to stay when they know that their lives are at risk, their properties are at risk, but we have a housing deficit issue.
So the government needs to find a way of linking such people directly with a lot of the schemes they're trying to put out. Things like the National Housing Scheme they keep talking about. Things like the mortgage schemes they keep talking about, where they say there'll be zero equity for houses below a certain threshold.
Yes, we need to do that. But state governments also need to get engineers, because we leave everything to the federal government. The state government can also as well come up with their own schemes. After all, the land that is for the people is entrusted in the governor of the state. What is he doing with it? So it's something that not the federal government can carry the burden for the entire 36 states in respect of housing. The state governments need to come in as well, because that is the key to the story. It's about, where do they move to?
You know something I very quickly worry about? The local government chairman, the councillors.
We forget them, Abi.
Yes.
Completely.
No, we see them driving around, balling. Anyways, we move on. Speaking of balling, very interesting next headline from the Punch newspaper: ban on smartphones unconstitutional. That's what the Deputy Senate President, Ekwewmandu, is telling INEC, saying that the decision to ban the use of smartphones at polling stations is against the Nigerian constitution, giving room for freedom of communication. For me, some people would dare say that this is a bit curious, because INEC has expressly said that they're not banning the use of mobile phones at polling stations. They're saying don't take it into the booth with you. Now, when we look at schools who do not allow students to take in mobile phones for exams, and this is all the way to postgraduate, this is not a new thing. So how does it appear to you that suddenly we're seeing headlines and stories saying this is unconstitutional?
I'm not sure if this is miscommunication or deliberate attempts to misconstrue what has been said. We obviously have a problem of vote buying, and this is one of the ways INEC can come up with to try and reduce that. We all know how vote buying occurs. So you go into the polling booth with your phone, you take a picture of you stamping the particular candidate you want, you show them, and you collect your money. So it does not prevent observers from taking pictures of the entire process or of videoing, or even regular citizens that have come to vote. You can still do all of that. The only thing is, when you're going into the polling booth, leave your phone out. So I'm not sure I'm not sure I agree that it breaches any rights or any part of the constitution in respect of that. If you truly don't have anything to do with your phone there, you would not.
Because
have a
what is the
problem with it.
purpose of your phone with you as you are
Going to
thumbprinting?
Exactly, that's the point. So I'm not sure it does. But another, well, on a lighter note, he made this comment while on a condolence visit to Bayelsa State Governor who recently lost his mom, and I just thought I'd find that election season. I mean, every visit is
Everything is political.
Like, can't you just? I'm sorry about your loss and move on.
As far as there's contact.
With the
Something was
press.
said.
Okay.
Yes. Henry Manuel sent in this message on WhatsApp. Henry said, just reading the 2016 Auditor General Report and CBN's 2017 financial reports will reveal that the federal government does not have the required cash inflow to sustain its annual obligatory expenditure. It was surprising that an entity that cannot sustain current operations was planning on expanding its investment commitments. I'm grateful that we have suspended the project. I hope we will learn from this. Thank you very much. And we have this one from Ike. Ike says, why is GMO... Okay, Funmi, your intelligent analysis of issues has a calming effect. You'll excel as a hostage negotiator.
Perhaps if you're thinking of leaving the firm, just letting you know.
Okay,
It's an
thank
option
you.
for you.
Yes, another career path.
We just help people out at Smooth. That's what we do. Let's move on now. Speaking of career paths, what is the career path for Zainab Ahmed, who was deployed in a supervisory capacity following the resignation of former Minister of Finance Kemi Adeosun? The headline from Premium Times reads, Presidency clarifies position of new finance minister. At a news report recently, Mr. Adesina, who was speaking to press, was asked as to whether or not Mrs. Ahmed was now the finance minister. She says, yes, she was Minister of State for Budget and National Planning. She's relinquished that title, but really what you call her is a matter of nomenclature. Overseeing minister, acting minister. What all that matters is that she's now doing the job. And I'm paraphrasing, but that's what he said.
Yes, and I agree, yes and no as well. Okay, first and foremost, let me apologize to some people that I'd argued with that what the president did was to give to the second in command or the Minister for State for Finance and stuff. So it was after it was after that I realized he brought the Minister of State for Budget and National Planning to the Ministry of Finance. Okay, so it's not mere nomenclature because we have procedures that are followed. Every person, although we have somebody that's been acting for years, but what usually happens is that a minister is supposed to be confirmed by the people, the representatives of the people, which is the National Assembly. So in a case of a resignation like this, such a sensitive position should not be left vacant. So yes, it is absolutely normal to put somebody in acting capacity, but for how long? And then when it's also a bit I'm not sure there's any rule that says you should hand over to your second in command, but it just is what happens by convention that, you resign, the second in command comes in until the process is taken. Yes. The usual process of an appointment and confirmation and all of that. And so which is why I said it's not mere nomenclature, because it's not by a constitutional provision, it's not a decision that's supposed to be taken by the president alone. It's supposed to be a decision taken by the president and the legislature. So saying that, well, we've put her there, it's not good enough. We understand the situation. We understand that the substantive person has left. So please explain better to us that we needed somebody to act in acting capacity. Whether you deceive us with the acting or you don't deceive us with the acting, at least, but still make it sound like you're interested in following the procedure that the Constitution has laid down.
Okay, let's move on. From the Daily Times is the final story. We're talking agriculture now. The federal government is to generate 6 billion naira from concessions of 20 silos. Now they are to generate, not that we have this money yet, but let's explain. They've approved the concessioning of 20 out of the 33 silos in the country. That's what we have in the whole country. Okay. But saying it will earn a whopping 6 billion naira in the 10-year period for the first instance. The government did say, though, that it would remain the owner of the silos, and then at the end of the 10-year, it can either renew, revoke, or take over the silos and operate them ourselves.
First and foremost, let me first of all say, like you said, is that all we have in the country?
The whole country, we have 33 silos, and we don't know what state these silos are in.
Exactly, we don't
Maybe
know.
That's why we could only concession 20.
20 out of them. But it almost feels like what this government promised to do at the beginning, we're getting to see at the end, because we know that one of the key issues was diversification. And agriculture was a main area where we're supposed to look at. So yes, this is good news if we know the state of the silos, but adding to that, we do not have enough. I mean, if the government is serious about agriculture and about it being another source of income, not just for Nigerians, but for the government, they need to do a whole lot more than this. We've not done half of what we thought would be done in respect of relying on reducing our reliance upon oil and using agriculture as another source of income for the country. So it goes beyond, I mean, develop the agricultural sector for private investors, for private individuals. That's one arm of it. But we also need to understand that as a country, we need another source of generating foreign currency apart from oil and gas. And we have thought agricultural mines, it's one area that this government will look at. And so this, as much as this is good news, it almost looks like we are doing 1% out of what we ought to really have done.
Well, on that note, thank you very much for me. It's been an absolute pleasure having you in the studio. Lots of people sending love messages. I don't have time to read out your love messages. Lagos, this is not the show for that. Keep it to yourself. But there are other messages. Eji from Arepo says, where are the citizens talking about the flood? Advised to evacuate from the floodplains. Where are they supposed to go? Is that what obtains elsewhere? The people are poor. That is why they cannot help themselves. What is the job of government? Well, internationally, what happens is the government tends to have relief shelters a little bit away from where the disaster areas is, so there will be tented areas where they can go to. So it would be nice to see if our government gets involved in that. James from Marine Beach, meanwhile, sent in this message.
So with INEC explaining better about where not to use your phones, the police should be thoroughly trained on this. Should be know how then they behave.
Yes, absolutely. And Solomon from Akoka says, as a Minister of State, she had already been confirmed by the legislators. It's just a matter of moving around, which the president has discretion over. I don't know something about that. It's not just moving around. It's not just shifting posts. But that's all the time we've got for this morning's analysis of Freshly Pressed. It has been very informative. For me, again, thank you. Please find her up on Twitter. She is at Funmi Odude, and she goes to battle her way through the rain. Hopefully it's a little calmer. You'll be all right. Our thoughts go with you. Coming up next, we've got fantastic music. When I Used to Love You, John Legend, something, because these are things we're applying to Nigeria, but maybe we'll come back to that state of love someday.
Yes.
Good morning.
Wow.
Thank you. Sweet. Ugojo is still on leave, right?